So, does a chin up work the biceps more or the lats more? That's a question I got asked in the comments yesterday, and I think this question itself highlights part of the problem we have in the online fitness community that has been so heavily influenced by the bodybuilding world. And that's this weird idea that the body and that the skeletal muscular system works like a bunch of Legos, like a stack of Legos where you can isolate different muscles, and that exercises have some automatic default percentage as far as these things go. And the problem we have is that questions like this aren't actually practical or useful to us in any way. And I'm using the chin up here because that's what I was asked about as something that's synonymous for all big compound movements. This doesn't have to apply to just the chin up. But let me ask you the question. Does it matter? Meaning, if we know that the biceps, according to all physiology data we have, all EMG studies that we have, everything else, if we know that the chin up is a very, very powerful recruiter of the bicep muscles and the lat muscles, does it matter? Does it matter that one gets worked more than the other? Because people have this idea that the body is like a block of Legos, that maybe if one of them becomes the weak link, that the other one's not going to grow. And the truth is, that's not how it works, guys. And it's not like on any given exercise that if one muscle gets really strong, it stops growing. See, people have this idea that on a bench press or a chin up or anything else, that if one muscle gets stronger, that it doesn't increase your strength on the rest. And what I mean is that, let's say a person has never bench pressed before, right? Or let's say they've never done a chin up before, and they go do a bunch of curls or tricep extensions, right? They do a bunch of curls and tricep extensions, and they add an inch to their arm measurement before they ever do their first compound. Are they going to be stronger or weaker their first day doing the compound? They're going to be stronger because the biceps have a significant contribution to the total weight you move on a chin up. Just like the tricep has a very significant contribution to what you can do on the bench press. And so if you came in and did that, people would say, aha, well, see, their arms would be the strong link and the muscles of the torso would be the weak link. So only one of them is going to grow. It's almost like people have this idea of that. No, that's not true at all. If you come in and because you've done isolation work ahead of time, that you can lift 30 more pounds on a big exercise, the other muscle gets the same work that it would have with 30 pounds lighter. What I mean is that if you were only strong enough to have done 3 chin-ups, a given body weight, and that can happen. Someone who's untrained, who's felt relatively thin, or talking about a fat person, they can do 3 chin-ups usually with minimal training. If they're underweight, usually they can come in to do 3 chin-ups. But if they did a bunch of bicep work, they might be able to do 3 chin-ups with a 25-pound plate hung around their waist. Did their lats get any more or less work? No, the lats got the same amount of work. Their biceps being stronger just allowed them to move more total weight on the same exercise. Right? That's all that happened. So did the lats get more or less work? Lats got the same amount of work. Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that another muscle got stronger and contributed more and allowed you to lift more weight. Both muscles are now still subject to the progressive overload of the exercise. Both muscles are going to get to relative fatigue doing a given amount of reps and sets. They're both going to get bigger and stronger. And it doesn't matter that one of them started out of balance. It doesn't mean that because you trained just your lats or just your biceps and it got a lot stronger, so therefore you're stronger on chin-ups, that one of them isn't going to grow. They're both going to grow because you're now increasing overload. That's the beauty of big compound movements. You grow on a big compound movement from the progressive overload no matter what percentage of muscle is contributing. It doesn't matter. And it could be the same way on a chin-up if you had done deadlifts. Because people say, well, how would you get your lats bigger and stronger? Well, deadlifts. Let's say you had never done any arm work, but you did some deadlifts. We've got pretty strong scientific evidence that the lats get massively recruited on the deadlift, even though it's a partial exercise. In theory, because it's a partial, they shouldn't get maximally recruited. And I would argue against the EMG data that suggests that they do, because there's EMG data showing better activation in the lats from heavy deadlifting than from doing rows and chin-ups in some cases. I don't believe that's true, because EMG data is inherently flawed in the way it's gathered, so I wouldn't take that to the bank, because it's a partial rep. It's a partial rep. Partial reps don't maximally recruit muscle fibers in a given muscle. It just doesn't work that way. So, we know it's a strong recruiter, therefore you could add a pretty good amount of muscle to your entire upper back doing deadlifts. Your lats will get bigger and stronger, so then if you started doing chin-ups, you'd probably be stronger on the chin-ups than had you not done any training at all, but your biceps would now be weaker. And again, a lot of people say, well, the biceps must be the weak link. They're going to limit the amount you can lift. No, the amount you can lift on a big compound is the limit of your total sum contribution of the muscles. The only time this becomes a limiting factor when other muscles can't get stimulation is when a stabilizer is too weak. What do I mean by that? Let's say your core, your abdominals, your spinal erectors or whatever are too weak to squat. Let's say you did nothing but leg presses and did no core work, and your legs are now strong enough to squat 300 pounds for 5 reps, but you can't stay upright with 300 pounds at all, so therefore you can't do it. That's different, because you have a stabilizer that doesn't allow you to actually perform the exercise with the weight you're capable of. That's different. Stabilizers can limit you. Primary movers do not. Primary movers contribute maximally the best they can in the ratios that they are capable of on an exercise. So having weaker biceps just means you'll do less on a chin-up. But your lats are still going to fire everything that they have. You're just not going to be able to do quite as much weight because one of the primary movers is weaker. But it doesn't mean that the primary movers contribute less. If you get to failure on whatever weight for 5 reps or 6 reps or 8 reps, all the primary movers are going to reach pretty much fatigue, right? All the primary movers are going to be fatigued because they're going to contribute as much as they are able to in their respective joint angles. If you push or pull as hard as you possibly can, every muscle involved is recruited with the fibers it has available at the joint angles you're doing with everything that it has. That's how it works. Doesn't matter as far as the ratios, they're still going to get worked maximally. They're both going to be, in fact, even if one of them is disproportionately stronger, you're probably going to get more of a novice effect in it. It's probably going to grow a little faster because it's weaker in proportion to your total potential for your structure and your genetics. Therefore, it's going to train faster and easier, and it's going to catch up more quickly the second you go to a big compound that uses it as a primary movement. But both muscles, or all muscles involved, are still going to receive strong growth stimulation. All right, on a bench press, if you're performing the bench press correctly, the bench press is going to train your pecs and your front delts and your triceps. If you train it to fatigue through the proper ranges of motion, they're all going to grow. If you're training that lift hard enough for any primary mover to grow significantly, you will stimulate some growth in all of them. It might not be maximal growth in one specific muscle, but it will still grow. You can't just come in and do a heavy compound movement with enough overload that the weak link grows and nothing else does. That's not how it works. The weak link doesn't limit your ability to recruit the other muscles. And that's something that people have to be made to understand. That's the beauty of big compound movements. That's why they work so effectively. And in fact, that's the reason you can train them long term and you can't train isolation movements continually. In other words, progressive overload stops far more quickly on an isolation movement than a compound, no matter what program you run. Because on a compound, the weak link muscles will always play catch up more quickly. And when they do, it will increase your work capacity on the entire exercise, which in turn will continue to cause everything to grow. Again, that's understanding and programming. That's why the compound movements work so damn well. That's why they beat isolation movements, because eventually they will catch everything up in a more trainable manner. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.